Hi, my name is Garippa, and this is my attempt in explaining how I moved through the four field structures of attention in a real-life example of moving through the U, acting in the world and not on the world. What does this mean to a leader? Acting on the world is management, not leadership. And in our social reality, we don't need any more managers. Management is the process of dealing with or controlling things or people. We need leaders, people who will lead the group or the people. So how do we use the U to lead? We use it by collaborating, and in this collaboration, we end up with a creation of unity of purpose or unity of thought. And then that becomes a group action upon the world that we live in, acting in this world, instead of one person's will, with many people just complying out of a sense of duty or fear of losing their job. My example is going to be demonstration of how a group came together in order to collaborate towards a goal. And in this case, the goal is making sure our students are competitive in their college application process. My example is going to be an LLACS's reversal in dual enrollment protocol. For me, this actually began during my leadership interview. During one of the quick slides from downloading into presencing, Dr. Evans and I became engaged in a deep conversation about a system we both saw failing our students, or at least failing in its intended goal. The goal was to make our students more attractive for competitive colleges by having them graduate with an associate's degree. And what we were seeing is that there wasn't really a significant increase in their acceptance rate, and we didn't understand why. The left side U movement was fast because we were already in the same place. We just hadn't sat down and dialogued about it until then. Once we started talking, we discovered the blind spot, and we were able to start seeing past it together. Our blind spot was our own ignorance towards what would actually give our kids the competitive advantage. The next slides will be the journey that I had as we were working through the problem following that interview. The first field structure of attention is I and me, acting from center inside one's own organizational boundaries. So here I am, sitting in this downloading phase, in the middle of a crisis, trying to understand why students with associate's degrees are still not being considered for highly competitive colleges. What's wrong with their applications? What's wrong with what we're doing? I started conversations within my own school with other senior staff members and some administration. We were all talking and working to try to come up with some solutions, but there's no action. And there's no action in trying to change anything because we're all stuck within these boundaries, my own boundaries. This is a very important step for realization, but there's no action being made. And without changing our habits, we won't produce new results. So I moved on to the next field structure of attention, I and it, acting from the periphery of one's organizational boundaries. This is the seeing stage, where I know the problem exists, and now I actually have to take a step back and look at it, or move to the balcony, as we've all learned in other classes. The biggest part of this was suspending judgment. I had to remove contextual issues that may have impeded students before. This was no longer an academic issue. This wasn't an issue of our kids not being competitive academically. There was still something else. And this wasn't a bias issue. This isn't a cultural thing. This is something that's still broken in our organization that we have to address. So I had to work to open dialogue with others. I'm still within my organization, but I need to outsource where I'm getting my input. I also had to clarify the question, what's the broken part? I needed to look for the part of our process that wasn't really working in sync with everything else. So I talked to guidance specialists. I talked to our curriculum specialist. I looked outside of the normal senior meeting team who was looking to improve our college acceptance rate and bring in outside resources. On to the next field structure of attention, I and you, acting from beyond one's organizational boundaries. This is also considered the sensing stage, where you redirect your attention, and that's exactly what I did. I redirected my attention. I acted outside my organizational boundaries by seeking outside help. I used a lot of network connections I had. I contacted admission counselors who were friends from former jobs, and I asked the right questions that came from the previous step when I was speaking to people within my organization. And I started to figure out and realize where we were missing connections. Admittance of the organizational boundaries is a really big step to be able to move outside of them. And looking for outside help and using those relational concepts towards a solution is a very important step in being able to come back into the organization and fix what may be broken. And that's exactly what started to happen as I brought the problem outside of our school and into other realms of education. In the final field structure of attention, I and now, you're acting from emerging sphere across one's open boundaries. This is a very exciting step for us because we're presencing and crystallizing with people from outside our own organization, all working towards the same common goal. We're bringing in new ideas, new thought processes, but we're all working towards the same goal, making our students more competitive for the future, and we're planning for their next steps. And that was our whole purpose in the beginning. We just weren't as skilled at it as we thought we were. So what did this mean for us? Well, we had to plan. We have 4 colleges coming in, either deans or admission counselors, and we're going to set up a consortium where we will sit and strategically plan whether a student should continue on the associate degree path or if they should perhaps take more targeted classes based on what their career paths choose. It also meant we needed to accept some moments of truth. We were on the right path, we just weren't always in the right direction. And that's a hard pill to swallow, but as leaders, sometimes that's what that means. You have to accept that you made some wrong choices, but move on. We also had to let go of some pipe dreams, and that was that the associate degree was going to make the big difference. What did I learn when I reflect back upon my fields of attention using this example? Well, moving in and out of the sphere allowed me to be a more competent leader. In order to do this, I really needed to accept my limitations and embrace others' expertise. And when I did that, it allowed movement across those boundaries. When I knew the right questions to ask, I didn't feel any hesitation in reaching out and asking a dean of admissions those same questions, something that I would have been very fearful of doing out of probably my own arrogance, but because I had experts in the school telling me this is a problem and this is the question, I came with that knowledge outside of my organizational boundary and was able to ask that question of others. Most importantly, open dialogue was the key to making this consortium happen. If there wasn't open dialogue between so many people within the organization and then outside of the organization, this wouldn't have happened. Along with open will, everyone involved needed to be willing to come to the table and say, I may have been wrong in my previous opinions and judgments and pathways, and I'm willing to think about what you're bringing to the table and consider it as our next step. In doing that, I really see how this entire field of attention comes together and becomes a very successful skill that leaders can use to really move their organization forward.